Hello, I'm Johanna, the Alopecia Angel, and I healed and reversed my own alopecia areata naturally and holistically. Through everything I walked through, which took me over more than 3, 4 years, I started sharing what actually worked, and I never stopped. For 10 years now, I've helped adults and children in over 68 countries heal and reverse their own alopecia, their own hair loss, various different types of hair loss in less time. I'm here to tell you and to show you that you can heal and reverse your hair loss naturally and holistically, and it's 100% possible. So follow along every week. We talk hair, real success stories, client testimonials, the latest research, and so much more. Welcome to the Alopecia Angel podcast, Awaken to Hair Growth. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Leah Gordon, for joining me on the Alopecia Angel podcast. And today's topic, we'll be talking about hormones, hair loss, and anything else that comes up on this very friendly conversation that will be transpiring here. So, Dr. Leah Gordon, besides hormones, who do you help? What is your main focus and practice?
Yeah, so I do a lot with women's health, hormones, and fertility. So that's kind of my main world is helping women become pregnant and helping them to optimize their hormones before pregnancy and for some women after in postpartum time. And in my mind and in my world, fertility is really just an expression of health. And when we talk about fertility, there's so much that goes into that because if you are struggling to conceive, it's typically one of the first canary in the coal mines or the first tip of the iceberg, the first tip off or a big tip off that there's something going on internally in you or your partner. And so what ends up happening is when you're a fertility doctor working in a integrative and holistic manner, you end up kind of being a doctor for a lot of things because everything impacts our fertility and it's a big expression of our health. So, yeah, hormones and fertility and what that means can kind of touch so many different parts of somebody's life.
So, over the course of your work and your years in practice, are there any statistics that you can share with us in regards to, let's say, a decline in fertility rates, what you've seen in your practice? What are some of the culprits? What are some of the nuances that you're seeing? Because, things change year to year and decade over decade. So anything you can share?
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many specific stats, but things that are just on the top of my mind. Now it is 1 in 6 people globally who are having a hard time conceiving, which is shocking and would never have occurred decades before. And I have a lot of thoughts and reasons why I think that's happening. That's a shocking number. In the male side, over 50% of fertility struggles and miscarriages come from the male side, which is still completely ignored in conventional medicine, which is crazy. And that number is dropping significantly. So there was a book that came out a couple years ago called The Countdown. And she did a lot of research on male fertility. And one of their shocking statistics in that book was how the rate of male sperm counts has gone down so fast in the last few decades that if that rate continues, does not accelerate or slow down, it just continues exactly as it has, that I think by like 2045, most men in developed countries will be infertile, which is really alarming and shocking. And no one really seems to be talking about it. And that's just insane, that that rate of decline is happening so quickly. On the female side, the leading cause of infertility is PCOS, or now it's PMOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome was the original name. They have now changed the name to being more of a metabolic ovarian syndrome that is more reflective of what's going on. But this is more of a lifestyle based imbalance. And that's the number one cause of fertility struggles. And so that is crazy. I think it's 1 in 8 women have that condition now. Endometriosis is another thing that is on the rise. A lot of women who have painful periods or painful sex don't even realize that's what's going on. It takes the average woman 4 or 5 years of going to the doctor to try to figure out before they get diagnosed with endometriosis, which is super sad. Most couples are trying to conceive for over a year before they get any help from the conventional model, which I think is so broken and so silly. And a lot of them are then shuttled into IVF. And I myself actually had to do IVF because my husband actually has true infertility. And so I'm grateful for it. But I think the whole fertility model is just very broken. So not only is it getting worse, the fertility world is getting worse. The outcome for us being able to have children in general as a species is getting worse, but the support that we have for it is also not great, in my opinion. And so there's just a lot of things broken.
So, on a positive side, what do you think about all these older women having babies?
One day I'm going to write a book because I'm like, there's so much to say that it's like, how do I sum it up? I mean, there's a couple different things. One, I think there are cultural and historical reasons for why it's happening. One of them is especially the millennial women, who I'm in that category, and a lot of the women now who are in their late 30s and early 40s are still kind of considered millennials. They were raised in a culture where we had that wave of feminism that our mothers grew up in, and that we were in like the third or fourth wave of feminism in the 90s. Our mothers were in the wave of feminism in the 70s. And people get really up in arms when I talk about feminism, but it's not that I'm anti-feminism. It's just we have to talk about why we're here in the first place, because we were sold the message that we can do anything, we can be anything, and I believe that we can, we do. But so many women were pushed and encouraged into the career path and into really making that a big part of our identity and about our value. And so women did, and they went down that path and have done very well. And women do amazing things. And I'm one of them. I became a doctor. So grateful for that. But the value and the priority on becoming a mother was devalued, in my opinion, based on so many of these different movements in our culture. Yet the biological desire and urge to become a mother is still within so many women. And so they went down this path, and then they found themselves waking up in their 30s or maybe even 40s being like, oh my gosh, I think I want to be a mom. I need to do this, right? And so for some of them, it's just they've been so preoccupied thinking, of course it's going to happen. It'll happen. You know, like I get to have almost whatever I want at any time because that's so much of our instantaneous culture. If I want to become a doctor, I can go to school and do that. If I want to start a job, I can do that. If I want to become a judge, whatever, we have been given this idea, you can be anything, do anything. And that message slowly also trickled into you can become a mom at any time and any time. And that biology is just not necessarily the case, because we have a biological clock and we can't just become a mother at any time and at any age. And I think a lot of women are waking up to that idea, and it's very shocking, and there's a lot of grief there. And that's the one thing I want to say. The other thing is the whole culture of birth control. So hormonal birth control was brought in the last century as this solution for all women's problems. And that's a whole other conversation we can go down the path of talking about, because at the time, if you look at the history of birth control, it was really pushed strongly by Margaret Sanger. And her whole idea was she wanted women to have sexual revolution and freedom and to be able to control how many children they have and all of these things, which is noble. I totally understand. When we don't understand our hormones and we don't know how to prevent pregnancy, a lot of women literally couldn't afford to have 12 children, and it was a big problem. So I understand historically and culturally what they were doing. But at the time, contraception was very taboo and in some places illegal. And so the way that they got it pushed through the FDA was to tout it as a women's health hormone cure-all. Basically, that's how they got it through the FDA, was to say hormonal birth control fixes hormone problems, not as a contraception. And that idea really stuck in the medical industry, not only because that's how it got through the FDA, but a lot of conventional doctors were really taught and still believe that birth control solves women's hormone problems. Because if a woman comes in with painful periods and they give her the pill, the painful periods are less. So in their mind, they're solving this problem. And so there was this huge wave of almost every woman of reproductive age was encouraged or put on birth control, not only for contraception, but also for almost every hormone problem, from acne, short cycles, long cycles, heavy cycles, painful periods, PMOS, PCOS, mood issues, PMS, almost everything that a woman experiences, the solution from the conventional medical side was the pill. And now all of these women, because they were on the pill, they didn't get pregnant accidentally. They were able to pursue their career and do all of these things that were valued by our culture anyways. They're all waking up in their 30s and sometimes 40s being like, wait, I want to have kids, and not realizing that that pill has been covering up the fire that was brewing underneath all along. And unfortunately, unlike period problems or hormone problems that can be quote unquote fixed by the pill, which isn't true, it's not fixing it. The analogy that I use is our symptoms are intelligent and they have a reason for being there. They're alerting us like a fire alarm. When we have a fire in our home, the fire alarm is wise and intelligent and it's very annoying and it's very loud, but it's saying, there's a fire, please pay attention. And by giving women the pill to solve hormone problems, it's akin to calling the fire department, and the fireman gets out and unplugs the fire alarm and says, here, ma'am, I solved your problem. There's no longer this loud beeping. Look, I'm the hero. And it's like, okay, yes, there's no more beeping. You have calmed my symptoms. You have silenced the alarm, but you didn't actually address the fire. And if that fire never gets addressed, whether that's inflammation, microbiome issues, nutrient deficiencies, you name it, when a woman goes to try to get pregnant, you have to plug the fire alarm back in. You have to pull the pill, and that fire comes back raging, often more intense than it was before. So women are not only delaying getting pregnant because of career, they also are having a harder time getting pregnant, in part because of birth control and not addressing the fire. So they're struggling more and more. And our just lifestyle in general and the things that we're exposed to and COVID and all the things that we've talked about are making it harder. And so, there's just like this whole intersection and this whole idea that women have of, well, I'll just do IVF. I can get pregnant at any time and in any condition, at any age and in any ecosystem of my body. I'll just do IVF and get pregnant. And the women are sold this disillusion that's just not true. Because creating life is still sacred and it still takes a healthy vessel. And even though IVF allows us to get around a lot of obstacles, and again, I'm so grateful for them, like my husband's obstacle of infertility, it does not equate to having a healthy system and a healthy vessel that allows for life to grow. And so then women are again like disillusioned by the system, being sold this pipe dream a lot of times that you can just get pregnant at any time.
And let me go ahead and stop you there because I have my 2 cents that I'd love to chime into because I'm one of those moms who had her first baby at 40. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, I definitely do want to have a second, maybe even a third. But I think also timing is so key. And you're right, I was very career driven. I was working for tech, I was working for Apple, and I was just like head down, just work, 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 work. And then I was like, oh, wake up one day, I'm like, oh, I'd like to get married and have kids. Yeah, let's just throw this in. Like, where do you start? And I will say this as somebody who got married later on in life, who had a baby at 40, it's very different for sure. Hands down, it's very different getting married to somebody when you're in your early 20s or 20s, late 20s, early 30s versus meeting them after a certain point in your 30s, later 30s. And because a lot of the good ones are taken, a lot of the driven ones, right? The thing is, it's like most people do not want to marry just a regular person who's got no drive, no ambition, nothing going for him, right? Let's just be honest.
Mm-hmm.
No one wants to marry a couch potato and then have to support him. And so the thing is like, there's actually research and studies for those of you who are single. This is a book that I research everything in terms of the problems that I've ever had in my life. And being single was actually a problem before alopecia. So let me go ahead and just share this book.
Please do. Yeah, because that's another factor is women not finding their partner.
Well, the thing is, for example, as many women are with this feminism and movement of educating ourselves and being career driven. I mean, I can tell you all my friends from since college all the way through, they all have been driven, ambitious, super educated with PhDs, master's degrees, Juris Doctors. I mean, you name it,
Mm-hmm.
they have the degrees. But in this book, it's called Datanomics by John Berger,
Okay.
and it showcases Census Bureau information, Department of Labor statistics, and granted, this is only focused on the US, but he showcases information from 1980 till today. And the problem with wanting to have a baby, wanting to have a family later on in life is that lo and behold, you may have to settle for
Mm.
somebody who's not as educated as you are, not as driven, not as ambitious. He may be remarried with like multiple baby mamas and kids. And so this author, John Berger, who I'm actually in contact with because he wrote other books, but I told him, I reached out to him. I was like, hey, I followed your instructions in your book and I found my man and we got married. And, he's perfect for me. And we had my baby at 40. And so the thing is, going back to this is like, I have lots of friends who are still single at 45,
Mhm.
who are
Yeah.
still working for Apple, who are still head down in
Mhm.
corporate, and they want to find a right man. They want to have a partner and they want to have kids, but they don't want to do it with just any random person. They want to do it
Yeah.
in a sacred way, using your word in a sacred family way, as a family should be, not just because of the act of getting pregnant and having the kid and being like, okay, done. I had the kid.
Mhm.
This is not a checkbox. This is much more
Totally.
in depth than just checking something off. And I even told myself as I was single, I was like, if you don't find the right partner, you're not having a kid just to have one. Like the
Mhm.
right partner has to be there. And that's
Yeah.
hard too, because yeah, sure, we can have kids on our own. Anyone can go out and have a rendezvous and come back pregnant. But that's not the type of society that most educated women want. They don't
Right.
want to create that. And so there's a dichotomy there. Like you create this educated, ambitious, driven, you take care of yourself, health and wellness, all the things. And then you're left with like slim pickings when it comes to partners. And
Yeah.
so I wish someone had told me like in high school or like early in college and say, hey, find your partner as soon as possible. Be on the lookout. Cause I was like so
Mhm.
into study abroad and traveling and experiencing the world. And I was in la la land. I was just doing my own thing. And
Yeah, well, I think it's the greatest irony of millennial women, right? So I'm going to say millennials because that's really the unique group that has been impacted in this way because our mothers and the mothers before them kind of forged the path of trying really hard for us to have all of these opportunities. And then it was sort of our generation that really were pushed into college, into career, and all of this stuff. And it's such an irony. And it's really sad because basically, one, if you were on birth control, which not everybody was, but if you were on birth control, it changes your hormones so much that you're not really that attracted to people. It's just not your main thing. It literally shuts off your sex hormones. And so there's just not as much of a drive to try to mate or be with somebody in that way. It can create more of a, I don't really need anybody else or any other thing. It's just not driving you to do that. And the other piece there is the values that we place. So just like you are mentioning, it is the greatest irony and sad in many ways for women. And I have a lot of patients in their 40s who are similar. Like they kind of, in their late 30s, were just like, oh my gosh, I need to get married and then have a baby. I've been working so hard my whole life, creating this beautiful life. I have all this financial abundance. I have, this body I've been trying to, protect and support for this future life of having children and a family. And then I just woke up one day and realized, oh my God, I'm kind of running out of time. And it's one thing if you have your partner and you're in your late 30s or early 40s and having that realization. It's a whole other thing entirely if you don't even have your partner yet, if you do want to have a baby in
amen.
partnership. And I think about that a lot because my experience and my journey was with infertility. And I met my husband at 18. I met him
Oh,
at
wow.
18 when I was in college. And, we've had our own journey of low libido, painful sex, infertility. Like it's been a long journey of 18 years with him. And it's been so beautiful in so many ways. And we were in partnership, but couldn't conceive for a very long time. But then I look at people like my sister, who is recently single after a breakup, which is so sad. And she wants kids so badly. And she's like, just every day, she's just like, I want children. And, I had that experience and that thought the other day. I was like, infertility is really sad, but it's also very sad when you want a baby and you don't even have a partner because it's also sort of like infertility.
Because I will say I have a big place in my heart for single moms.
Oh,
Single
yeah.
moms take on so much and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of dedication. It's a lot of self-sacrifice. But on the flip side too, my neighbor has 5, 6 kids and she started early, or even my mother-in-law, she had 6 kids and we were talking about this yesterday and she had them all within a span of like 10 years. And I'm like, you did the Olympics there. You had
Totally.
a marathon, you had 6 kids. And I tell her jokingly, and I was like, no wonder you don't want to even see any of your grandkids, like because you're done. Like you've tapped out with all your own kids, with not having the support, with not having the village, and dealing with 4 boys and 2 girls. That's a lot of kids
It's
to
a
have
lot of
to
kids.
wrangle, handle, and put into good manners and all the things. And so I see it on her face and even on my neighbor's face. We're the same age, but she just has 5. And the wear and tear on her is very
Mhm.
visible. Having a lot of kids on the flip side of just having one is very different. And so I think timing, at least for me, has been such a big thing. I will say research, timing, manifestation, like all the things happen
Mhm.
in terms of finding my one true love. And I will say that action, like I guess when you're ready, and when you take a lot of action, it just happens. But you're right. When you don't have the partner, this complicates the situation. But in my case, I had my baby on the first try at 40, and I
Amazing.
count my blessings. But that was also because I had healed already from alopecia. So my body was primed and prepped and like ready to go.
So I love that you said that because alopecia was your fire alarm, right? Alopecia was your big symptom that was blaringly obvious, saying wee wee wee. But that's what it is. It's a fire alarm saying, please pay attention. Something is not right inside of you. And what a blessing that you dove into that and truly healed it because you actually investigated where the fire is coming from and you put out the fire. And if women did that, and if our culture encouraged that, and if our medical system had a path for that, then the moment a woman was ready, she would conceive on the first try because she was given the gift of actually looking and healing that fire that her symptom was alerting us to. Instead, our culture is all about suppression and about stopping the symptom. And I completely understand. Sometimes certain symptoms need to be suppressed. Sometimes certain things are so debilitating or so life altering that we really do need a solution for them from a suppression perspective. But we just don't have the reverence in our culture and our medical system for what is our body trying to tell us with this symptom or with this condition, and how can I ask better questions, dive deeper, heal the root? Because then fertility, theoretically, it would just happen because you've healed your fire. That's my biggest beef with the world right now is we push women to burnout and then we don't help them investigate the fire and then they're on a time crunch biologically and then we're just like, sorry, it's so sad. And it's just there's a better way.
I have so many friends who've done not just IVF, but then also retrieval of their eggs and freezing the eggs and all this. And it's not a guarantee. We know now, 20 years later, after the hype has dwindled ever so slightly, that freezing your eggs is not a guarantee. And also, IVF is not a guarantee. I mean, I know people in their early 30s who are doing IVF and they come back failed. And going
Hmm.
back to what you said, it's because the vessel wasn't like there's problems there
Yep.
that are not being addressed. And so, if you're not getting pregnant, or if you're working with me and you're not seeing hair growth, there's more work to be done. There's always
Yep.
more work to be done if you're not getting the results that you want. And it is disheartening because you're right. We are sold a pipe dream, but I do love seeing and celebrating people, celebrities, whoever that are having, kids in their 50s. I just saw this lady who she's having her third kid at 53. And granted, they
Wow.
don't tell you whether it's naturally or IVF, like they don't tell you, but I'm assuming that it's natural. But then I also have friends who they had to do 4 rounds of IVF to get their one child. And so to me, again, it's not a matter of age. It's a matter
Hmm.
of that vessel, as you say,
Yes.
like how well prepared are we? Have we done the work? It's just like training for a marathon. Have we trained our body to do what it needs to do at a certain caliber and level so that we can hold space for a new life?
100%. And I love what you said about that, that it doesn't really matter the age. And it's so true. It's sort of like in the dating world when people are like, age is just a number, because a lot of times when you find the person you love, they could be older, much older, or younger. It doesn't necessarily matter their age as much as how your connection is. And that's sort of the same in your health in many ways. You can be in your late 20s or early 30s and have worse health and have worse fertility than someone in their 40s or 50s, depending on the health of that vessel and the health of their mitochondria and all of these different things. And age is not a guarantee. And yes, there is some truth to as we get older, our mitochondria are more impacted by certain things. And there is a time when eventually a woman's hormones are going to shift where she's not able to conceive naturally. And yes, IVF can come in and do things to make a pregnancy happen, but the vessel needs to be healthy at any age, and age is not the factor. And I tell people all the time, when they ask, can I get pregnant at 40? It's like, it literally depends. Well, that's not the question you should be asking. It should be, how's my health? Is my vessel appropriate and ready? And why I love talking about symptoms is for anyone listening at any age, they are such your friend. They are telling you, they are alerting you early on. So maybe you're not ready for a baby yet, but you're thinking about it. What is your period like? What are your symptoms like? Do you have alopecia? Do you have gut issues? What's going on with your mood and your energy? These are all clues telling you whether things are going well or not. If you have beautiful hair and nails and you have amazing energy and your gut is awesome, you poop every day, your periods are on time, they're good, healthy flow, you're not spotting, you don't have PMS, you have all of these amazing experiences of your life. It's a very good sign that fertility is going to be easier for you at any age within that biological window. If you're even in your 20s and you are having alopecia or you have gut issues or you have skin issues or you have low energy or you're crazy moods like all over the place, it doesn't matter that you're in your 20s. That could be some obvious signs that we need to look under the hood and figure out what's going on. And that's just something that is just not taught in our culture and in our medical system. It's just like, oh, let's just cover it up. Let's just put that over here in this box in this category. And that's just not, in my experience or opinion, what should be done, because we can have those as a gift, our pre-pregnancy gift of how can I optimize based on how my body's feeling and what it looks like.
Absolutely. So let's go back to birth control ever so slightly. There is new research out. Research came out interlinking the continuous use of birth control over many years, decades, etc. Now linking it fast forward to autoimmune diseases and other chronic diseases. And potentially this is one of the risks or one of the factors as to why more women have autoimmune diseases over men in general. We're 80%. And so I was like, oh, wow, this dawned on me because we all know somebody on birth control. We all know somebody who started around 15, 16, 17, 18 on birth control at some point. And even if the female hasn't been on birth control extensively, they've been on it at some point in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So have you seen this research? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah. There is an increased risk of autoimmune conditions, especially gut related, but systemic autoimmune conditions, which I'm sure you talk a lot on here about the gut and how they're so interconnected and the connection. I don't know if this is brand new research that I haven't seen specifically, but there has been a long-term connection with hormonal birth control in particular and autoimmune conditions in the gut, but maybe they're extrapolating it into more autoimmune conditions. I'd have to look at that more current research, but it disrupts so many things and for so many different reasons. And unfortunately, it just takes many years for us to see these kind of impacts and these effects, and for us to look back and look at the research. And the pharmaceutical industries in particular really don't want these kind of things to come out. So who would be studying this? When people are like, well, why don't we know? If you don't understand how research works, it can be very confusing as to why we don't know more than we do, or why we only know certain things and don't know other things. Because you have to remember who funds research and why it's done in the first place and how expensive it is. And there's a lot of politics in research. It is very expensive to do research. And If you're trying to do research to just prove that a pharmaceutical is doing something wrong, that's typically not favored in a lot of circles. And or if you're trying to prove how amazing natural medicine is or lifestyle medicine, like who's funding that? Because there's no financial benefit. Who's benefiting from that? So who's going to fork up the money to do that? People just don't think about that. And it's more complex. And so to see associations that are clear like that can take a long time or a lot of people to study. And so I think it's such a shame that it's taken us so long to understand some of these impacts because I feel like a lot of people, especially in my world and environment and naturopathic medicine, have known them for so long because we see them clinically. But to have the actual research to back it up, where a lot of people won't make a change or think it's valid until there is that research, it can take a long time to actually have that. So the fact that there's actually research showing that at this point means it's so significant and so impactful that it's been done and is now out in the world, which is something to think about if you're on birth control or have been on birth control to maybe look deeper or pay more attention to for sure.
The thing is, we're living it at a time where people are starting to wake up more and more.
Mm-hmm.
The wool has been taking over our eyes. Right before starting to record, we talked about Fauci ever so
Mm-hmm.
slightly and how he's on trial right now, pleading the
Mm-hmm.
fifth about COVID and this mass situation that's impacted millions upon millions of people,
Yeah,
women, children, and generations to come because of one vaccine. And
I know.
so, in the same vein, I want all my listeners, but especially my clients, to question the birth control, question the medication, question the reasoning, question why they can't heal naturally, question why we're going to go for this medication or this pharmaceutical. Just question authorities, because if we continue to just do things as is and as we have been doing, just obeying, then this can lead to bigger problems later in the future. Right now, we're seeing a lot of new statistics come out in regards to the side effects of the COVID vaccine. But then this hormonal birth control, I mean, birth control has been in our lives for over 5 decades. Like, why do we not have more research on this to begin with? And why are they handing it out like candy?
Oh gosh, I know. I have a Kindle that I read at night when my daughter's falling asleep, and I read a lot of romance and romantasy, and it was really fun. But then it was ended, and I went into my library, and at some point I must have bought this book on birth control, but it's written for the conventional doctor. And I was like, well, I'm bored. She's still falling asleep, so I'm going to start reading it. And it was fascinating. And I kept reading it because I was like, I totally can see how people get brainwashed into thinking a certain way because I teach on this. I have entire courses on breaking up with birth control. I mean, even reading this, I'm like, oh my God, you're right. You're totally helping women. You're like totally solving their problems. For someone who doesn't have any of the past context, the way that doctors are trained, it's not their fault. It is so much indoctrinated into how they are and what they're thinking. But that is so crazy and scary because that's what we're talking about with the stuff with COVID and with birth control. It's so ingrained in not only the culture of people who haven't studied medicine necessarily, but it's ingrained in the culture of the people who are studying medicine and the people that we look to, the doctors, to be like, well, what should I do? And what's going on? And I think not only should we as people be questioning authority, but also any doctor listening should be questioning the same authority because I think there are upper authorities, right, that are passed down into the different hierarchies of authority. I don't even like thinking of medicine like that, but it is the truth of doctors and different people where they also need to be questioning. Like, not everything from the CDC or the WHO or the main organizations are correct, in my opinion. And we need to start thinking more critically and asking ourselves these deeper questions and always being cautious. I just feel like people are so cautious when it comes to natural medicine and herbs and food and anything that's like been around forever, but they are so accepting of whatever comes down the pipeline in the conventional model or whatever is being done because that's just what we do. And really starting to think about, well, why do we do it that way and where did it come from? And I think the Fauci stuff is really interesting because when you dive into history with the birth control pill, reading The Birth of the Pill was a great book if you're interested in understanding the history of the birth control pill. And I think it gives a lot of context when we look at history as to why we are where we are, because so much of the indoctrination of our medical system and the culture is because of these historical contexts. And the same goes with Fauci and who he was and all the horrible things that he did in the past. And if people knew that, and I don't even know, I feel like people who still know that are still so brainwashed into understanding how evil of a man he was and all of these things. But the history leaves a trail, and we just have to question what is coming down the pipeline and what is happening, and to always be, you're guilty until proven innocent in our law system in the United States, but we don't do the same with medicine, sadly. It's
Yeah.
innocent until proven guilty. And so that's what comes out is all of these things. And I had a patient the other day who is a baby of DES. If people remember back in the day, they gave that to women a couple decades ago for morning sickness, and it led to a bunch of malformations, limbs that were born, babies born without arms and legs and all sorts of things. And it's so sad. And doctors were just handing it out like candy. It was the next best thing for morning sickness. And she has a uterine abnormality that's affecting her ability to become pregnant. Most likely, she was a third generation. So her grandma took DES. But when she was pregnant with her mom, her eggs were inside of her.
Right.
So 3 generations are impacted by what you do when you're pregnant. And that woman, like her grandmother who took DES, impacted most likely her daughter's eggs that were in her body growing when she was in utero. That's now impacting her ability to become pregnant. And so when they were pushing the COVID vaccine on pregnant women, I just wanted to scream because I'm like, this is an experimental thing. You have no idea. We don't even let pregnant women eat cheese. I mean, like, what is going on that you're pushing this? It
Or
made me
liver.
so, I know. I'm just like, no, like what is happening? It's just crazy. The insanity of it all was just beyond.
Yeah. I hear you on that one. I count my blessings because I had my baby in the Netherlands and it felt like the Middle Ages. And in some ways that was good, and in some ways it was like horrible. But either way, they allowed me to make decisions and call the shots and to do this or to not do this or to wait or whatever it was. It was either I had ability to make a choice or I had no choice and no absolute testing or anything. So there's a lot of testing, for example, during pregnancy that the normal American female does. And I didn't do. I only got what, 2 ultrasounds, and that was it. Like
Hmm.
a urine test. That was it. 2 ultrasounds and a urine test. My whole pregnancy at 40. That was it.
Wow. I
I
mean,
know.
it's amazing.
Kind of scary because I was like, wait, don't I need this? Don't I need that? Don't I need
Yeah.
anything? They're like, no, you're good. I'm like, oh, okay.
I mean,
Well,
there's a time and a place for the medicalization, and then there's a time and a place that it just depends. There's pros and cons to all the different treatments and procedures that we have. But yeah, it's crazy. The whole medical establishment and the recommendations and all of the things that exist, you have to just question, and this might just be a worldview paradigm shift that people have to have. You just have to question why things are the way they are. And there's 2 paradigms, right? One paradigm believes that it's because someone benevolent out there is like wants the best for you and is doing all of the best things that are possibly possible. And there's no way that you would ever recommend anything that's not the most amazing, most benevolent thing ever. I bow down to you, government and WHO and CDC and all the people. And unfortunately, in certain circumstances, it's just not that case, or that's another worldview, right? That not everything is always done with the most benevolence, and there are other factors at play that have influence and motivations and things. And just because someone of authority has said it does not mean that it is of the highest benevolence or is the highest and best good for you?
I did have some rapid fire questions for
Yeah.
you. What are some things that we can be doing today, male or female, to protect and increase our fertility?
I'm a big fan of testing fertility early as soon as possible, whenever you think I might want a child. So if you're a male, doing a sperm analysis right away, even if you're not actively trying to conceive, because that will tell you right away if there's a problem that needs more investigation. And it can take a long time to find out what's going on and to fix it. And then for females, doing some specific blood panels. I actually have a freebie, maybe I can put in the show notes of your guide of
Yeah.
what labs I recommend. Because just like we talked about health and age, you might be in your early 30s and think you're totally fine. But if you run lab panels, you might realize that there's something off that is indicating that you might have less time than you think. Or on the flip side, you might be in your early 40s and run labs and be like, wow, I actually have more time than I think based on certain hormones and different things that you can test. And having a baseline from labs, I think, is very helpful because if you have something going on with your thyroid or you have something going on with your hormones or inflammatory markers or any of the things, blood sugar, insulin, they can help guide you to what specifically should I be focusing on to optimize my health and therefore my fertility versus just kind of doing blanket things that could apply to anybody. the more specific you can get on what's going on with you, the more effective you can be. So that's the first recommendation, is good comprehensive testing for both partners. And then as far as foundations, looking again toward your symptoms and your symptom picture to identify if there's some area that needs imbalance. You have to remember that fertility, outside of physical things, physical blockages, blocked tubes, structural issues, those are things we can't necessarily shift with diet or lifestyle or natural medicine for the most part. So those things aside, paying attention to your symptoms are your biggest report card of how your health is doing. And outside of those physical blockage symptoms, if your symptoms are good and you have a good thriving health picture, then for the most part, fertility also should be intact. And if your labs also appear that way, then it's, for the most part, it's the closest we can get to be like, I'm good. If you have some significant symptoms, that is a sign that something could be off that you need to address that would impact fertility, because fertility is a side effect of optimal health for the most part. And I have the caveat of the blockages because my husband is the picture of perfect health. He has perfect testosterone. He is fit. He's handsome. I love him so much. There's nothing like obviously wrong with him. If we had not done a sperm test, granted, I found out about his sperm during medical school during a sperm analysis class. So I had a sample of his under the microscope during class. That was when I found out he had no sperm. Outside of that, he is like the picture of health. I would never have known that he had a sperm issue, which is why I'm such an advocate for sperm analysis early on, because not always are symptoms going to tell you, but he had a genetic blockage issue that took us forever to figure out. But outside of that, looking into your hormones and your symptoms. So what's going on with your period? Is it heavy? Is it light? Do you have spotting before your period? Any of those are signs there could be an issue. Is it painful? Do you have extreme cramps? Do you have PMS? You're irritable, you're moody, you're bloated, you feel like crap before your period. Those are all signs that something could be going on with your hormones. Do you have hair loss? Do you have dry skin? Do you have brittle nails? Do you have brain fog? Do you have weight gain that doesn't seem to matter what you eat? Those could be signs that your thyroid is being impacted. Do you have low libido? Do you have painful sex? Do you have yeast infections, fishy odor in your vagina? These could be signs of bacterial imbalances in your vagina, which can affect fertility. How's your gut? Do you poop every day? Is it normal? Is it easy to pass? Or do you have gas and bloating or diarrhea, constipation? These are signs that your gut health might not be, up to par. How's your energy? Do you feel burned out? Do you feel exhausted? Do you feel like you can't get out of bed, that you're wired and tired? These are signs that your adrenals might be out of balance. So these are just areas that you can kind of self-evaluate and say, how am I doing? Because that's the most effective way, is to pinpoint you and what's going on with you, to optimize that from a natural perspective and do everything you can from a diet, lifestyle, mindset, natural medicine perspective to bring that back into balance. Because hopefully at the end of the day, if those are in balance, your fertility should be as well.
Fantastic. Any last parting tips, tricks, or anything else that you wanted to talk about or make sure that our listeners knew about you or about fertility hormones or anything else that we talked about, birth control, maybe how often they need a detox before trying to get pregnant?
There's so many things I could say. Detoxing is important. I would say toxins are a big part of our fertility epidemic, and being mindful of the products that you're using and how they're in your body. But the one thing that I want to mention that most people in the fertility space don't mention that I think is really important, especially for your audience, if they're similar to you, where they were more career driven and career oriented, and maybe were on birth control or just have been living in our current society, is that being mindful and aware and learning about different energies. When I talk about masculine and feminine energy, not everybody understands what that means. And it doesn't mean boy and girl. It's a quality and a way of being. And being masculine is very achievement oriented. It's very go, 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 getting things done, calendars, structures, routines, all the things really that make someone thrive in our current society and in a work environment, and what a lot of millennial women were taught to embody to survive and to thrive, is the opposite energy of life creation energy, which is more feminine energy. And again, man can be feminine, women can be masculine, or vice versa. It's not a gender thing, it's a quality. And feminine energy is more art, flow, dance, creativity, nature. There's no rhyme or reason. It's not structured. It's the flow. It's ever changing, ever evolving. If you want more concrete ideas, I obviously have a whole course on this inside of my membership, but David Data does a really good job of speaking about masculine and feminine from a polarity perspective in the libido sense. But understanding these qualities, once you get it, you can really see, even if people, it's like, oh, she's being super masculine right now, or he's being very feminine right now. And just understanding what that means in your day-to-day life. Because what I encourage a lot of my fertility patients and where I see them struggling a lot is embodying more of that feminine energy. There is no agenda, there is no calendar, and you literally go based on where your heart is pulling you and what is bringing you joy and pleasure. What do you want to do? What do you want to create? It can be really hard for people who've been living in a masculine energy for a really long time because it can feel really unsafe to just have that lack of structure. But unfortunately, to create life and to be in our feminine, which is the energy of creating life, is the opposite of the masculine energy. And even in the fertility space, we can get very into the masculine of having entire charts of this is when I take my prenatal and these are all the things and everything is very calculated and very like mechanical and I'm tracking my ovulation and I have my aura ring and it tells me exactly, it's great. It serves a purpose, but it's a different energy,
You're
which
hitting
is
it on the
why
head.
so many people, it's the most infuriating thing to someone going through infertility. But it's why so many people are like, just go on vacation. I got pregnant on vacation. I knew a girl who was having infertility and she just went on vacation. Well, it's because people on vacation are in their feminine for the most part. They're out of their routine, their structure. There's a lot of joy, there's a lot of pleasure, there's a lot of just being in the moment, being in the present. And not everybody can just go on vacation and get pregnant. My husband literally has no sperm coming out of his body. Like us going on vacation is not going to solve that. But being in your feminine, no matter what your diagnosis or what your condition is, will help. And it's such a beautiful thing to learn how to embody because it's also helpful in pregnancy and in being a mother. And they both serve different purposes, but I would say we have a deficiency of feminine energy in our culture, especially millennial women. And it's a needed part of the conversation. And it's just as important as labs and supplements and diet. I think how we embody ourselves is also very important. So that's kind of what I think I would leave you with from a tip perspective.
I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Leah Gordon. That's beautiful. And I think people, even myself, need to hear that sometimes because you're right. Our society is built on what you produce,
Mhm.
results and what you've done. Everything is almost like a resume. Like,
Yes,
okay,
that's
well, here's my
masculine.
curriculum, right?
Mhm.
Here's my curriculum. This is everything I've done, I've achieved, I've accomplished. And it is a lot of that. And I'm guilty of that.
Oh, I mean, this is why I know these things. I am
Yeah, I
not
don't
sitting
know.
up here on a high horse being like, I'm better than you. Like, I need it more than anything. And it's something that I learned through our infertility journey that was really painful for me as well. And IVF is like super uber masculine. It's getting pregnant in the most masculine way because it's all structures and routines and protocols and all of this stuff. And so I always encourage my patients who are going through IVF to continue to embody the feminine even in that process because it's even more so in the masculine. So I know this because of experience and what I've gone through and I've seen so many women. And so, yeah, if you want to learn more, I have a membership called Womanhood Wellness and I support women on the path toward becoming and being a mother. And I basically give all the protocols, guidance, and support around all of these things that we've talked about around optimizing your health as much as you can to, walk through womanhood differently because I just feel like it's sorely needed and it's not really accessible to a lot of women. I have a podcast called Healthy as a Mother. If you guys want to check that out, it's co-hosted with my best friend and it's on becoming and being a mother if that's something that interests you. And my Instagram is Dr. Leah Gordon. It's my main platform, but you can find me on other ones, same handle.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your information, your wealth, and of course, how we can get in touch with you. This has been so much fun, and I can't wait to have you back.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Before you go, hear me out. Healing is possible. For so long, it was never even offered to you as an option. That changes now. The Hair and Heal program is my proven natural method for reversing alopecia and hair loss from the root, discovering root causes, uncovering triggers, and looking at all the blind spots. Come learn more at alopeciaangel.com. I'll see you next week.